Chair, and through you, I would like to thank the Minister for a very comprehensive response in regard to the difficulties and the need
I'm not saying
by all accounts to have been entirely avoidable. The suspect is alleged to have raped a then 11-year-old girl in 2020. At the time, the 11-year-old victim was intent on filing a complaint to safeguard against any future violence by this boy. After a prolonged and disgraceful legal battle, the girl's mother was left distraught as the charges against the boy were withdrawn and no real retribution had resulted from the complaint. It was, however, recommended that the boy be placed in an intervention program. This, by all accounts, did not happen with very tragic results. What safeguards are in place to ensure that child perpetrators of gender-based violence are properly monitored and made to attend intervention programs? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. I will avoid in all forms to follow the example of Minister Mtsera by sticking into the question. But because it's a topical case that one has been able to go through as well individually, is the alignment that I'm talking about between the police, the magistrates, and the social services or the psychological services, that a joint system needs to be able to provide. You will receive an order, you go to investigation, or the issue is investigated. The protection needs to go beyond the issues or the circumstance that the victim is facing at the time. It's a sad case, and one can only say we'll learn from it in terms of strengthening our systems. But to be able to offer an alternative and a full support in the system in all our courts, it is practically not possible at this moment. But in courts where you are able to provide support, you do. But secondly, jointly with the SAPS, we're also even looking into the refinement of the 24-hour waiting period. Person who either would have been reported to be missing or reported to have been a victim facing whatever form of abuse or intimidation to be assisted urgently rather than the reform of our systems and services. Get more information if you need on how best could we be able to monitor, which is what I think I agree with you, it's a part that is lacking, particularly cases which are already on the roll, which needs a firm and a tight relationship between the investigation and the prosecution, either by a court or a magistrate. I mean, there's quite a number of examples, even here in the Western Cape. Our last meeting with the minister here was about some of the cases which have been dropped, which don't relate into sexual offenses, but it happens, the arrest, the investigation, and the dropping of the cases, or the unavailability of evidence at a particular time. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Denner.
Thank you, House Chair. Honourable Minister, you mentioned that one of the 7 intervention steps are to make capital investments into facilities. Now, your predecessor, and I know that you can't speak to what he said to us, but your predecessor confirmed to this House in March of this year that 98 courtrooms have been upgraded between 2019 and December 2023, exactly to be used as sexual offences courts after the ascension of the Judicial Matters Bill. I would like to know how many of those courtrooms have indeed been finalised, can be used, are they all in use? And are those 82 facilities that you mentioned part of the 98? Because we have, as you know, a great shortage of sexual offences courts, and this is a very serious matter, so we need the facilities. Thank you, House Chair.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. In fact, the progress between that March and today is an additional 2. So we currently have 100 of those upgrades. And I must contextualize, Honourable House Chair, that the limit of the infrastructure with regard to upgrades for the department is at around 1 million. The related development of infrastructure resides with the Department of Public Works. We're doing jointly work, not only in a sexual offences court, but in magistrates and in high court. And we must indicate the challenges that both departments are facing in terms of shortage of funds and or availability of funds versus the demand of infrastructure improvement. But the 100 facilities have been upgraded. They are victim sensitive, they are victim user friendly, they protect the children in instances and cases where they are. There are still, yes, in all the magistrate courts that have not been covered in terms of that. And as you move, the target increases, because who would want all the courts and magistrates to be victim sensitive, particularly on gender-based related type of cases, so that we don't second victimize our victims. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. And the last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Webster.
Thank you, Minister, for the detailed responses. In your responses, you mentioned human resource capacity. My question is related, and it's more about training. How much, or let's say, how is the allocated budget being distributed towards ensuring that staff and court officials are trained on GBV sensitivity and also on trauma-informed approaches within the courts, because that becomes some of the issues that happens in those magistrates?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much. There are about 4 running programs and there could be more. You have the magistrate commissions, which deals with the training and the capacity, the allocation, the upgrades of magistrates and the related programs. You have the Justice College, which takes both the prosecutors and the prosecution and deals with cyber forensic training. Then you have got both the SIU and the NPA running their own in-house training on the basis of what is needed. If you might have noticed, either last week or so, NPA would have released an advert of recruitment to ensure that we get the younger prosecutors and the training, which is ensuring that you get to beef up the system additionally. They are currently in the ID investigative directorate also having training programs which goes into provinces to ensure that investigation prosecutions also is stronger at the provincial level and not only dependent. And I might have let, for example, the judges have got their own institute, SAJ, which deals with their own development. As judges, you then have got SALA, the South African Women Leadership, which also has got its own training. So it's quite a number of training programs that are able to assist with regard to improvement. What we may want to guard against is to ensure that particularly with regard to cybercrime, forensic data analytics, those are areas which a shortage, and that impacts on the pace and the fastness on how some of the cases complex can be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable members, we will now proceed to question number 54. That has been asked by the Honourable Letlape to the Minister of Police. The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chair, and to honourable members. Before I answer directly to the question, I just want to make a statement in this regard. And the statement is that the gender-based violence and femicide and what is termed corrective rape are some of the most challenging antisocial behaviors in our society. While the South African Police Service has a role in addressing these issues, it goes beyond ordinary policing. In fact, it is near impossible to police gender-based violence in its entirety, in the sense that these incidents take place in households, in bedrooms, and all of that, and between people who are very close to one another. But that's not to say we say police have no role. We're just talking about the origins of this that make it very difficult to police them. Ourselves and not throw all the burden of policing these issues just to police and confine them there. It requires an all-of-society approach. To combat GBV and F, we need change societal attitudes through social engineering. Now, when it comes to answering directly on this question, the South African Police Service is currently implementing the Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Action Plan, now which is aligned to the National Strategic Plan on GBV and F. Focus area number 4 of the SABS GBVF Action Plan deals with the prevention of gender-based violence and sexual offenses. The SABS categorizes rape as one of the GBVF-related offenses. The intended focus is to enhance feelings of safety among women, children, and vulnerable groups, which are an integral part of all society. SABS implement GBV and F prevention and awareness raising programs within the focus area as prevention measures, but also to encourage victims to report and seek assistance. The involvement of communities and stakeholders in the use of awareness programs recognizes the police action alone. The involvement of communities and stakeholders and the use of awareness programs recognize that police action alone will not serve as a deterrent for intimate forms of violence like sexual offenses. But the interventions to address GBV and F-related crimes include the following. 1, awareness campaigns at identified GBV hotspots, ministerial dialogues and embizos on GBV and F, awareness programs that are conducted specifically by family violence, child protection and sexual offenses units which investigate cases of rape and are therefore very familiar with prevailing trends. Increased compliance assessment on GBV&F related regulatory frameworks at police stations, the improving of the involvement of community policing forums in performing oversight on police stations and promoting community education, and so on. There are quite a number of
Thank
these.
you, Honourable Minister. Your time has now expired. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honourable Letlape.
Aye, but this table stuff.
Thank you very much. Minister, there is a steady increase and not a decline in the number of reported rape cases in the country over the past few years. We know the primary purpose for the murder of Uyinene Mrechwane was for her perpetrator to commit rape. We know that Namhla Mthwa was murdered in Umtata in the Eastern Cape. And at the center of her murder was a boyfriend who did not want to let go of her. What is said with the issue of Namhla Mthwa is that the perpetrator is still walking free in the street of Eastern Cape. Due to what? Due to the incompetence of the police to investigate. What I want to find out, and we want to find out, Minister, is that what other measures and approach are you going to implement to make sure that prevention of violence against women and children stop in South Africa? Ngiyabonga.
The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you very much. It's not entirely what the honourable member is saying, that it's incompetence. In order to get somebody arrested and tried in a court of law, you need evidence and sufficient evidence. You can have an expert in investigating a case, but if you don't land in what is relevant for a particular case, you won't be able to. That case is among the cases that are receiving our attention now in Umtata. You will understand that we've beefed up security there in the form of detectives, in the form of special operations people, but we've also sought to strengthen our relations with people in the justice system. We actually had a chat with the Minister of Justice to say there's a complaint from there that says that there is something that people are experiencing in terms of perceptions, that prosecutors are not they are not doing what people would ordinarily expect them to do. Whether that's true or not is another matter. But we're discussing the matter with justice while these operations are taking place. And we hope that some of these cases, including the one that you are highlighting, will, yes, with the person that you are talking about, we will be able to come up with something, depending, of course, that with all the intensified kind of effort, we will be able to get sufficient justice. Evidence to get in that matter.
Thank you, Minister. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Klute. Yes, just take your seat one moment, please, Honourable Member. Yes, Honourable Mente.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, we're dealing with a case that is very sensitive in terms of the question asked to the Minister by our member. And we have given the names of victims of brutal crime. For the Minister not to say the name, she has a name. Now it's a by the way, and she's reducing her into some object that just disappeared.
Yeah.
Her name is Namhla Mthwa.
Thank you.
He must say her name so that he can understand.
Yeah.
The
Honourable
seriousness
Mente,
of this thing.
we are not in a position to prescribe to the executive as to how to answer. While I take note of your comment, it is an opinion. Honorable Klute, please proceed.
Thank you, House Chairperson, Minister.
Order, honorable members. Please give the Honorable Klute an opportunity.
Minister, the prevention of crime in general and the rape in particular requires a comprehensive and multi-sectoral approach by both government and society. In general, that means that the question of morality in society, substance abuse, stereotypes of men towards women, the centrality of civil society organizations as well as religious and cultural organizations are crucial in the prevention of rape. How is the police strengthening the multi-sectoral approach to fight crime in general and rape in particular? Minister, thank you, House Chairperson.
The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much. The approach is indeed along the lines that the honorable member is outlining. Communities differ one from the other. Other communities are highly organized in the sense that they're able to organize a neighborhood watch groupings. Others seek the help of private security, but others have CPFs. But the intention is to involve everybody in the fight against crime, wherever it rears its ugly head. We ourselves, in relation to metros, have started a program where we really make an effort out of our way and gather together, like we did yesterday in the City Hall here, get all the active social groupings in one place and listen to them, and including their advices, and then start implementing the outcome of such. So we do consult, we do involve, and we do work with social groupings in fighting crime. Thank you.
Thank you. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Nontenja.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. In April 2024, at the opening of the 64th Victim Support Center in Stellenbosch, the NPA head, Shamila Batoy, confirmed that despite the 75% conviction rate, there is a high number of GBV cases being withdrawn. Too many cases are not getting to court. Also, a total of 174 GBV matters were struck from the court roll between April and December 2023 due to SABC inefficiencies. Honorable Minister, the question is, have you or the department has considered a more effective solution to reduce rape cases from being withdrawn and train police officers to be more sympathetic and sensitive with the GBV matters and victims? If yes, what are the relevant details?
Honourable Member.
If no, why?
Thank you. Honourable the Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Honourable Member. I'm not sure about the red tape, and therefore I'm not going to be able to answer what you mean by red tape. But you speak about what you allege to be inefficiency on the side of police, and you allude to Advocate Batoy's statements. Fact of the matter is that, yes, there are instances where a case or cases will be investigated, but there will be some holes or some weaknesses in the statements that will be prepared to go to court. We do experience that. And what is happening now is that we are having initial discussions to say, how do we make improvements, not just in relation to statements relating to GBVNF, but all statements in all cases, so that we improve in terms of the quality of the statements that all police take in police stations when those matters get taken to court, so that both the magistrate or judges on one hand and the defense lawyers on the other don't find easy loopholes so that cases get thrown out. So there is that particular feeling amongst us that there is such, but it's not red tape. Thank you.
Thank you. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Thring.
Thank you, Minister. On any particular day, about 148 women are raped in South Africa. The vast majority of these rapes are the girl child under 18 years of age. With pornography being the theory and rape the practice, the ACDP has on numerous occasions called for the banning of all forms of pornography which denigrates and objectifies women. That said, Minister, noting the poor conviction rate of around 14%, do you agree that better cooperation of all crime-fighting agencies needs to be improved in order to increase the conviction rate, and that there needs to be harsher sentences meted out to perpetrators of rape, including life sentences? If yes, how do you propose to implement this? If not, why not?
Thank you. The Honourable Minister.
I agree with the larger part of your statement that you need cooperation of more than one department in making sure that you increase the rate of conviction. I've just alluded to one, that we need to do what we've identified as one of the areas of improvement, wherein SABC work very closely with NPA in particular. And from what I've gathered, including what we'll be discussing in the first meeting of the JCPS, it would be those areas that are being identified as areas that need very close cooperation. And in some of these cases, during investigation, you do need to have a very close proximity with NPA so that there aren't too many gaps between what SABs are doing and in turn taking to the justice system and NPA themselves. And there is agreement and there's willingness politically to do such closeness and ensure that the quality of our work getting to courts at the required level for convictions to be. So what we intend doing, therefore, is to go exactly on those areas that have been identified. And we hope that once implemented, once agreed on and implemented, we will have an improvement. And look, I just want to say that it's not only us here in this house that want higher convictions. Even the police themselves, they want to see their job and their work resulting into a higher number of convictions. We talk about this every day. They want this themselves. And that's a plus in terms of the work that we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable members, question number 11 has been asked by the Honourable Jabani to the Minister of Home Affairs. The Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. The answer to the question relating to this bill is yes, it will be tabled in due course. The Cabinet decision of the 10th of April 2024 did include a number of comments that need to be addressed through supplementation in the bill, and that is what we will do. Chair, we also, of course, have a new administration elected by the people, and supplementing the bill will ensure alignment with the GNU's emerging priorities, with the work of Operation Vulindlela, and with the medium-term development plan. At the end of the day, all of this will ensure that we present the strongest possible bill. It is very important, Chair, that we get this process absolutely right, so that the bill that emerges from this process is absolutely watertight to legal challenges. I must emphasize this. I've made the point that Home Affairs needs to get out of court and onto service delivery, and so the work we do in this regard has to be legally watertight. Finally, to the honourable member, I think it's important to also point out that we have to actually prepare Home Affairs to effectively implement this bill and other legislation that is currently before the Portfolio Committee and that is emerging out of the work we do. That is precisely why it is so important that we pursue digital transformation, reform of Home Affairs, strengthening our internal capacity, including the understaffing problem that we have, so that we ensure the system is in place to effectively implement this bill, secure our borders, and enable growth and development. Thank you.
Thank you. The first opportunity to ask a supplementary question is that of the Honourable Chabane.
Thank you, House Chair. Thank you, Minister. The ANC has noted that extensive work has been done on the white paper by the executive and ultimately approved by Cabinet in the sixth administration. Notwithstanding areas of your concerns, Minister, that you have raised, what can you outline time frame when will the bill be presented in Parliament, given the experience of the last executive where bills are being brought in Parliament towards the end of the term? Thank you.
The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the initial planning indicates the 31st of March 2027, but obviously with the supplementary comments that have come out of the Cabinet process and the emerging priorities that need to be reflected, as I mentioned, the medium-term development plan, as well as the work of Operation Vulindlela, that timeline will be something that we will have to look at in a dynamic process. But I think it is important to make the point that we will be working very diligently to make sure that what is ultimately tabled is something that passes legal muster and is implementable. I think the only thing worse than what the Honourable Chabane mentions is if a bill is passed and it gets tied down in legal processes for years or even decades in some cases and ultimately becomes unimplementable. So we have to get this absolutely right. We have to make sure that the department is capable of implementing the measures that we want to take. And I'm confident that we can do that, certainly in this administration, agreeing with the honourable member that we should not leave things for the last second. And that's why this work is underway. And our commitment is to get it absolutely right so that it can withstand scrutiny at all levels. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Machi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honourable Minister, paragraph 9 of the white paper states that the department has no idea as to how many illegal immigrants are in South Africa, while paragraph 103 states that the sheer number of illegal foreigners in the country makes it impossible to detect all of them. Considering this, what are the expected outcomes and measures the white paper seeks to put in place in terms of clamping down on the influx of illegal immigrants at the local government? Thank you.
Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, indeed. This is an issue that is really of great concern. It's like asking how many illegal weapons are out there, how much illegal cigarettes is out there. By its nature, it is illegal. And therefore, it's not something that comes forward and says, detect me, find me. By its nature, it seeks to evade detection and the law. But that is exactly why we have to focus on this area. We have to build systems to detect. We have to make sure, in fact, that we have continuous ability to track and monitor and audit the number of illegal immigrants in South Africa. And there's really only one way to do this, Chair. You have to build an integrated system that is able to scan any document that someone may present to you, is able to detect whether that's a fraudulent document, and in the case of it not being a fraudulent document, is able to link with various other databases to check whether this person may have a criminal record or anything of that kind. And so that's where the big focus for us really lies, so that we build those systems, including by using the technology that's available in the year 2024 to be able to detect fraudulent documents, for example, much more rapidly. I would point out the recent case we had with the Miss SA issue. I mean, there's a case that dates back 23 years, and you cannot believe the amount of resources required to actually investigate and verify some of these things, because these were, even then, of course, more paper-based, more manual processes even than they are today. And so that just consumes a huge amount of resources. If we want to efficiently clamp down on illegal immigration, if we want to understand the scale and the extent of the problem, given that these are not people that come forward and say, please detect me, we're going to have to really invest very aggressively in building the technology to help us do that. And as I said, that's really part of the commitment. Thanks.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Ngubeni.
Thank you, Chair, honourable members. Thank you, Minister. I hear you saying, you want to get the process absolutely right. And while we are cognizant of the fact that the process for the white paper is underway, it must be concluded this year, but then, of course, the bill will come much later. But given the significant challenges currently faced by our country in managing immigration, including border management issues, that include security, illegal immigration, and the processing of asylum seekers, how does the timeline that you speak about for the development and implementation of the proposed overhaul align with the urgent need for these reforms? And furthermore, Minister, can you give definitive assurances to South Africans of the interim measures in place to address these pressing concerns while the white paper and the bill processes are underway? Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Before you take the floor, honourable members, you're reminded that follow-up questions are supposed to be a single topic and not subdivided. But Minister, you're welcome within your 2 minutes to take a bite at both cherries.
Thank you, Chair. No, I think it's an important issue. We can't wait, obviously, for a particular piece of legislation to pass and then deal with problems. So there is a huge amount of work that we have started doing and that will follow as the months progress to make sure that we put in place exactly the kind of system that I'm talking about. So, in fact, a bill, and we've seen this so many times in our country, you can write a piece of legislation, you can write an excellent bill. The question is, how are you able to implement it? If we're talking in this bill about our ability to monitor movement at the borders, you can write the sentence, let's monitor movement at the borders. How are you actually going to do that? Especially in a context, Honourable Chair, where the Border Management Authority is underfunded by 4.3 billion rand. You hear that correctly, 4.3 billion rand. When you are dealing with an environment in Home Affairs that's got 40% of the staff component that it requires. So there's just no way that we must believe, as important as legislation is, and these reforms are, that alone is going to solve the problem. So we are very focused on the administration side, on the systems building side. And for that, we are currently in conversation with various stakeholders, people who can assist us with capacity, and we are looking very closely at how we can reform our internal processes to make sure that we start moving away from these vulnerable systems. I mean, again, just to use a recent example, Chair, the issue of the Libyans who came into this country, we are talking there about handwritten paper visas that someone was able to use with their pen, pick up this pen and write in that you can come into this country. The applications in some cases were not even complete. There was not a specific selection of, I want this kind of visa. And yet, because human discretion allows for people to make these decisions, in some cases at a whim, they were able to issue those documents. And noting further in this case that was actually an official from DIRCO. Why is that happening? We are reliant on a department like DIRCO because we don't have enough staff. So you really are in a vicious cycle, and we want to deal with that. Thank you.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Ghana.
Honourable Minister, there's the first safe country principle for asylum seekers. Do you believe that this is a principle worth pursuing? The first safe country principle. Do you believe that it is a principle worth pursuing for this country, and what are you going to do to ensure that it's realized? And secondly, do you believe that what we are dealing with in South Africa it's a question of true asylum seekers or we are dealing with economic migrants. Thank you.
The Minister.
I note the two cherries again, Chair, but it's fine. Just on the second part of the question, Honourable Member, we have to have systems in place to differentiate between the two. There's certainly, undoubtedly, too many cases of economic migrants who claim asylum, for example, when they would be arrested. And so we must differentiate from those cases and genuine asylum cases. But the principle there is correct, the first safe country principle. And this requires international coordination. Because the truth is, if someone crosses, 6, 7 borders in order to get to South Africa, and some of those countries would be classified as safe, then we're sitting with a problem because we can't eventually take on the whole world's problem. We have to coordinate with international partners to make sure that that principle is actually applied. And so that's why I think there's an important conversation to be had globally as well, with partners at the UN, for example, to say we know the world is dealing with various crises. We've got wars, we've got conflicts, we've got migration issues everywhere, but you can't just leave Africa and forget about migration in this continent, and specifically in the case of South Africa as a big receiver. And so I think we're going to have to do more in this administration to put pressure internationally as well and say you're going to have to come to the table, enforce those kind of principles as we go forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honourable Members, question number 62 has been asked by the Honourable Jonas to the Minister of Correctional Services. The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. The answer to the question is as follows. The conditions of service are determined through a negotiated process with organised labour unions, a process which guarantees that the interests of all racial groups are represented. The Department has implemented various occupation-specific dispensations, or OSDs, which brought about unique salary structures that are fairly competitive for different occupational categories within the DCS. The Department of Correctional Services complies with the requirements of Section 21 of the Employment Equity Act, where its Employment Equity Annual Report depicting remuneration and benefits received in each occupational category at all levels of DCS workforce is submitted to the Director General of the Department of Employment and Labour for monitoring purposes. Sectoral agreements on the occupation-specific dispensations make provisions for career advancement through career pathing measures. These measures refer to pay progression to higher notches within the same grade and grade progression where movement is from a lower salary grade to the next higher grade, based on satisfying the agreed requirements. That includes performance and years of service. In addition, the department also applies post-advertisement for promotion to higher posts, where any official who meets the advertised requirements may apply and be considered for appointment to such advertised post. It's open competition. The department does not have its own pension rules. Instead, it has been implementing rules of the government employees' pension funds insofar as it relates to the pension payouts. Thank you.
Honourable Jonas, you have the opportunity to ask the first supplementary question.
Thank you, Chair. With reference to the Police and Prison Civil Rights Union, marched to the Union Building in 2022 to hand over a memorandum of demands for, amongst others, salary increase and decent living and working conditions. What measures does the Minister intend to put in place? A, ensure that correctional services employees do not face racial discrimination for occupational levels, but receive fair and competitive wages, and B, establish a transparent and effective model for promotions and pension payout. I thank you.
Honourable Minister, before I recognize you, Honourable Jonas, you have, this was the question you submitted and which the Minister has already responded to. In terms of the rules, you have an opportunity to ask the first supplementary question. So there's no need to just repeat the question. If you have a supplementary, do ask.
Okay.
Honourable Member.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. My apologies to the Minister. We did not put a request for a supplementary question as it's indicated, so it was a mistake for him to ask the same question, but there was not a request for a supplementary. Thank you.
Thank you. We will skip you. Just remember in future, if you are afforded an opportunity for a first, to ask the question, you automatically have the right to ask the first supplementary. Thank you.
Chairperson.
Yes.
But they are sitting
Honourable-
together, most. They are not caucusing on this thing. It's
Yeah,
embarrassing.
Honourable Mkalipi, all caucuses seem to have their problems these days. Let's move on. The next opportunity to ask a supplementary question is that of the Honourable Moela.
Thank you, House Chair. The follow-up question will be to the Minister that following the strike of Pop Crew in 2002 and the disaffection of members of the trade union, what steps has the department taken to boost the morale of the staff in this regard? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Firstly, I said in a previous question, I spoke to all the personnel from head office, about 2,000, and to uplift the morale, I said to them that each and every one of us must play the role. And I've referred to say, let's get rid of the bad apples, because it's those bad apples that also affects the good apples that are hardworking people with integrity. And it starts with consequence management. I also said that they can come forward with problems, and referring, for instance, to Pop Crew, I am going to meet with them one of these days to see how we can ensure that our people are protected against discrimination. Although we must also say this to each other, the declaration of intent when it comes to the government of national unity, it is quite clear that we say that when we appoint people, it must be on merit, based on experience, based on, for instance, qualifications, and we must ensure that we get the best person in that position. That's part of the declaration of intent, and that's what I'm going to do in the department that already started doing. Thank you.
Thank you. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Klopper.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Pertaining to the Civil Rights March in 2022, and considering wages are at best average for correctional service facility officials, considering the circumstances in which they work, will increases in danger pay specifically be implemented in the remuneration structures for correctional service officials, considering the dangerous and daunting circumstances that they work under, or will these concerns go unaddressed? Thank you, Honourable.
The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's fair to say that we must look into that specific matter when it comes to endangered situations or danger situations. And what I think, and what I already asked, for instance, is that I want the statistics on all the employees who are, for instance, in a specific position for the last 10 years, 10 to 20 years, 20 to 30 years, and I want to see whether there was increases in their salary, what type of increases, were they also promoted to higher categories or not, because I think you cannot have a person, say for 20 to 30 years in a specific position, and there are only very small, can I say, increases in payment. We will have to look into that, and that's why I said we're going to meet with Pop Crew as well to see how we can ensure that specific our wardens who are actually in a dangerous position. We had a couple of cases where they were attacked by inmates with sharp objects, and we will have to make a differentiation. But I will follow that process quite due.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Diale.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, the Pop Crew March to the Union Building in 2022 entailed more than just the narrow-colored nationalism that the PA seeks to portray. The march sought to address some key operational and policy shortcomings at SABC, including the need for tackling rampant overcrowding, gangsterism, and corruption in our correctional service facilities that had made it difficult for officials to maintain law and order. What we need to know, Minister, is since assuming office, what step have you undertaken to specifically deal with gangsterism and at correctional facilities, which is making it harder to maintain order at these facilities? Thank you.
Thank you. The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Part of maintaining order is, as I said, there must be consequence management. And I see consequence management as part of the situation where there are contraventions of certain rules and there are personnel involved with that who are complicit. Then to ensure better order, then there must be actions and consequences for those personnel. The problem is impunity. And actually, impunity is the problem of whole of South Africa, where our criminal justice system is at stake. So I strongly believe the moment you have good, fair, and just consequence management, you will improve the situation and have better order. I thank you.
Thank you. Honourable members, question number 34 has been asked by the Honourable Kohler to the Minister in the Presidency. The Minister.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Although kidnapping for ransom has been identified as one of the modus operandi used by terrorist actors in South Africa and globally, the more than 50 daily kidnappings in South Africa relate to various criminal activities, including extortion rackets. So the kidnapping for ransom, specifically to fund terrorist activities in the country, remain unconfirmed. We are currently attending to 23 suspected cases. Criminal investigations into the kidnapping for ransom cases, including with links with terrorism financing, are ongoing and have been prioritized. These investigations form part of a concerted effort to address key deficiencies in South Africa's anti-money laundering and countering terrorism financing regime as identified by the Financial Action Task Force, which resulted in South Africa being grade-listed. And therefore, the State Security Agency, along with other relevant departments, remain at work to identify, investigate, and when appropriate, to assist in preparation of cases for prosecution to counter sources of terror financing. The SSA continues to strengthen its counterterrorism capabilities and its capacity to counter the financing of terrorism financing through specialized recruitment, specialized training, technical assistance with relevant private sector institutions, and close cooperation and coordination with both domestic and foreign law enforcement agencies, including non-security cluster departments. As part of strengthening of capabilities, the SSA has finalized and is currently implementing the National Countering the Financing of Terrorism Strategy and the Targeted Financial Sanctions Operational Framework. And furthermore, the SSA, in the second part of the question, is not responsible for arrest or prosecution of any cases. However, the SSA continues to fulfill its threat detection mandate by identifying threats relating to terrorism financing and elevating this to relevant authorities and departments for court-driven investigations and prosecution. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Kohler, you have the opportunity to ask the first supplementary question.
Thank you, Chair. Ministers generally agree that the blame for the fact that extortion syndicates are running rampant within our country, be it kidnapping, construction, water, school, hospital, and clinic mafias, lies at the feet of our intelligence agencies, the State Security Agency, crime intelligence, and to a lesser extent, defense intelligence. Now, it's globally known that there is financing of terrorist groups flowing out of South Africa, perhaps via these rackets. Is it that the agencies have chosen not to do anything for all these years, or are they incapable of doing it?
The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. As indicated in my earlier reply, we continue to strengthen our capability, and it's because terror financing and terrorism on its own continues to change its own modus operandi. So it's a matter of continuous change and improvement on our system. As I've indicated, even with the grey listing, we have managed to get a new strategy approved that it integrates, and the operational framework on strategic targeted financing. It includes the ability to designate those who finance terror and also to sanction those who finance terror from our country. So that work continues. There are other announcements that will be made when the team has reported on the grey list, on the work we are doing on grey listing, which is the integrated team that is led by Department of Finance, SSA, the SA Police Services, and the Department of Justice, the entities within the Department of Justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Makubela.
Angibonge House Chairperson. Phathiswa, emaphoyisa abike kuthi kuletinyanga letisithupha letengcile bosomabhizinisi labalishumi nakubili 12 kanye nebantwana lababafunzi labasithupha bebathunjiwe ngenhloso yokuthi kutholakale imali. Basitwe ke ngileli thimba leli tihlaka letahlukahlukene which is multidisciplinary. Leli holwa lithimba lemaphoyisa seningizimu Afrika kuthi basitakale. Tshela thina ke mphathiswa kuze kuthi nalabo basemakhaya beve kuthi ngutiphi tinhlaka lotisekele wena ulithimba le State Security Agency kuthi unikete emaphoyisa naletinye tikhungo temthetho kuthi kulwisane nalobugebengu bekuthunjwa ngekuthi bantu bafune tigidzi tetimali.
Thank you. Yeah. Before we hand over to the Minister, it would seem Translation Services was not assisting us when this question was asked, so if we can please attend to that. Honourable Minister.
Honourable House Chair, my sortie is not very bad, but there was a part that I missed when she says Utimba. The team. Okay, thank you. Thank you for the translation services, the in-house translation services. Honourable House Chair, we continue to work with the multidisciplinary team of the police, and that's why we call them intelligence-driven operations. And that's why I have specified 23 cases that we've been working on, and the Minister of Police will soon make major announcements on breakthrough cases on the kidnapping for ransoms that have to be taken not only to court, but which we think with that crackdown will get into the root of the kidnapping for ransom
Honourable
cases.
Minister, my apologies to interrupt you. There is a hand on the virtual platform of the... I can't see that far, unfortunately. The Honourable Souls.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. My hand was raised before the Minister stood up, so it is not on the Minister. But I wanted just for you to note, House Chair, that us who are online totally have no interpretation service, so we are unable to follow the proceedings properly.
Yeah,
Just
thank you.
noting.
In this case, you were not worse off than those in the chamber, but we have asked that that be looked into. Honourable Minister, were you done or was there still a part?
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. and it's a pity that my train of thought has been a bit disorganized. But in terms of the work that we are doing, the police will make the necessary announcement, and we are confident that with the work done in terms of kidnapping for ransom, we will also be able to prosecute on the matters. I do not want to preempt that work, but it's a part of ensuring and dealing with the case, also the matter that was raised by Honorable Kola Barnard, that we are being effective in dealing with terrorism and counter-terrorism work, including the extortions, including the other rings. If you recall, the Minister of Police announced work that is being done for the extortion groupings, whether they are water tanker groups, whether they are construction mafias, and all others. So we have teams, multidisciplinary teams across the country, and we are going to have the handle of things and get a crack of things as soon as, Honourable Member. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Gadebe.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Honourable Minister, what proactive action has your department taken to ward off the targeting of South African citizens for kidnapping by foreign nationals, international syndicates, and terrorist groups? And whether does your department considers it a threat to national security? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. In terms of the National Intelligence Estimate and also National Intelligence Priorities, terrorism, including kidnappings and extortions, are band 1 priorities, and we should soon release the National Intelligence Estimate for the country so that the country understands the kind of work that we are doing and the challenges that the country focuses on, because national security is everybody's responsibility. As indicated earlier, we continue to work with the police, the prosecution.
Honourable Minister, my apologies, I'm going to do it to you again. There is now a hand of the Honourable Skosana on the virtual platform. Honourable Skosana.
Thank you, House Chair, and to the Minister. Honourable House Chair, this issue which is not resolved now, again, the issue of interpreters.
Yeah, Honourable Skosana, but can I just ask you to pause there? I don't think it's in the best interest of the oral question session for us to come into this matter whilst the Minister is on the floor. I will come back to you just after the Minister has concluded, please. Thanks. Honourable the Minister, my apologies.
Honourable House Chair, I want to plead that if there's a hand on the platform, I'll be allowed to complete the response and then you entertain the hand, because it's quite disruptive in terms of...
The difficulty is it might be a point of order, Honourable Minister, but please proceed.
As earlier indicated, Honourable House Chair, that we continue to work with the multidisciplinary teams and providing the intelligence work for the targeted efforts that we are on this area. As I've indicated, we will soon release the National Intelligence Estimate and the National Intelligence Priorities as approved by a cabinet for the country to understand the type of national security threats that we are dealing with, and also the concomitant responses and work that is being done by the multidisciplinary law enforcement teams to respond to those threats. And we continue to plead and call upon all South Africans to respond and assist the law enforcement agencies when dealing with crime, including the extortion rings. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Honourable Skosana. Well, we move on.
Yes.
Oh,
Honourable Chair. Oh, are you bringing me back now? I'm saying this issue is unbecoming. We can't be complaining about interpreters all the time. We are told we don't have interpreters. People at home want to listen. People want to listen. With all these other languages are being prioritized.
Thank you, Honourable Skosana. Yeah, we take note of your point. It's not that there is no interpretation services available today. There was just some technical difficulties, but ICT is attending to that. Thank you. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Saleh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, the International Court of Justice has found Israel to be responsible for apartheid policies. The United Nations declared Israel an apartheid state in June 2024. South Africa signed the International Convention on the Suppression and Punishment of the Crime of Apartheid. During apartheid South Africa, our freedom fighters and liberation movements were branded terrorist, and many were put on trial for terrorism, amongst other charges. What steps is the State Security Agency taking against Zionist South Africans who financially support acts of terrorism against Palestinians, and those who join the Israeli Defense Force to perpetrate acts of terrorism in occupied Palestine? Thank you.
Thank you. Before you take the floor, Honourable Minister, Honourable Souls, your hand is raised again. Is it a new matter? We have responded to the issue of the translation services.
No, Honorable Chair, but I think you were somewhat misguided as to how this took place. I raised the hand online. I think there's a delay. So you responded whilst the minister was on the floor, and it looked like we interrupted the minister. So I want to apologize to the minister, but I think there's a delay online. I raised my hand online long before the minister. So you only recognized it during the minister. So apologies to the minister. It wasn't meant to interrupt her.
Okay, thank you. Honourable the Minister.
Apology accepted. And on the question of terrorism and the designation and classification of terrorism, there are two factors. The first one is that South Africa is a signatory to the relevant UN conventions. Therefore, the designation of terrorist organization and terrorist is as per the UN, in line with the UN convention. Including our own framework for the operational framework that we use, our designation of terrorists is in line with what the UN prescribes as terrorists. We are not responding to any designation by any other country except that which South Africa has determined in line with the United Nations. And in terms of that work, everyone who violates and qualifies to be designated in terms of the United Nations framework and the South African operational framework as a terrorist will be deemed as such and treated as such, and the money flows are going to be blocked as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Before we move on to the next supplementary question, I believe the Honourable Skosana has again raised her hand.
Yes, Honourable Chair, thank you so much. Once again, I want you to put this on record. There's vacancy on this language I'm talking about, Siswati and Ndebele. There's vacancy in Ndebele. The lady has retired. She has retired. And Siswati, there's no one. There's no technical issues here. We should not be misleading the House. There's vacancy. There's no one as we speak. I'm asking you, Chair, that this matter has to be addressed as a matter of
Thank you, Honourable Skosana. We will look into that. Honourable members, we proceed.
Address it, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Honourable Skosana, obviously if there's vacancies, they must be attended to urgently. May I also plead that you lobby your whip to take this matter to the Chief Whips Forum so that we don't take away from the time the executive is to account by way of answering questions any longer. Honourable members, question number 14 has been asked by the Honourable Dikgale to the Minister in the Presidency. The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. The principal responsibility of the State Security Agency, as indicated in the National Strategic Intelligence Act of 1994, is to provide government with intelligence or counterintelligence on domestic and foreign threats or potential threats to national security, security of the Republic or its people. In doing so, the SSA plays a crucial role in supporting law enforcement agencies in the fight against crime and corruption, which threaten the authority of the state. In this regard, intelligence products are shared with the National Intelligence Coordinating Committee, NICOC, and its other principal members who are crime intelligence of SAPS and the defense intelligence. But we also share information with the South African Police Service directly and also the National Joint Operational and Intelligence Structures. But also we share intelligence with departments that are concerned on the matter that we pick up. So SSA regularly provides intelligence to departments of the state as and when required or when the matters arise. In intensifying efforts to fight crime, the SSA plays a counterintelligence role on departmental intelligence by conducting countermeasures against espionage, sabotage and subversion, security vetting, security advising, security investigation, and securing of government events, and the provision of security awareness within departments. To improve on intelligence sharing and coordination through the NICOC, the Minister, after consultation with the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence of the 6th Parliament, gazetted the regulations for intelligence coordination in April 2024, for years since time immemorial. And the SSA gathers intelligence with the purpose of countering crimes and supporting other structures such as the South African Police Service, the Directorate of Priority Crime Investigation, and others. This is done through the provision of forewarning and insight, as well as developing intelligence on proactive measures against crime by identifying, profiling, and investigating criminal individuals or groupings and networks that are involved in crime. The SSA also takes part in crime-fighting joint operations and investigations with its counterparts with the aim of prosecuting identified criminal networks operating within and outside the borders of South Africa. In this regard, the SSA liaises with intelligence and security services of other countries within the Southern African region, SADC, African continent, and the rest of the world with the aim of countering transnational organized crime. Thank you.
Thank you. The first opportunity to ask a supplementary question is that of the Honourable Dekgale.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. The Honourable Minister, the coordination of intelligence work on the states was found to be one of the weaknesses during the 2021 July unrest. What is the assessment of the Minister with regard to the level of coordination of the intelligence community? Thank you.
The Honourable the Minister.
Thank you, House Chair. Indeed, there was a problem with the coordination of intelligence that led to the challenges of the July 2021, but since we took over with the responsibility, we have worked with NICOC and the other principal members of NICOC to make sure that we've got the National Intelligence Coordination regulations, which are the first since the establishment of SSA, to make sure that we coordinate intelligence. That has resulted in improvement in the coordination of work. It's for that reason that members would have noticed that whenever the police are acting, they indicate that it's intelligence-driven. The mechanism of sharing intelligence has also improved, but also the functionality of the JCPS cluster, the Justice, Crime Prevention and Security cluster, has improved, and matters of intelligence are also discussed in that forum so that we can then improve that coordination. And it's for that reason that we've been able to deal with a number of issues. You know, there were threats towards the election, both the election itself and also the post-election environment, but because of the intelligence work, we were able to thwart those before the threats materialized. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Kohler.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, there's a saying that one swallow does not a summer make. One massive drug bust via crime intelligence actually shows the magnitude of the problem rather than being an end to the issue. The fact that we have drug labs set up at upmarket estates all around the country, that we have no X-ray machines checking trucks driving who knows what in and out of the country, that generally government technology is so out of date. It does seem that our intelligence agencies and services are expected to achieve miracles with their budgets being slashed and their hands tied behind their backs. What's the solution?
The Honourable the Minister. Thank you, Honourable House Chair. I think today my sin is to sit next to the Minister of Police and the Minister of Home Affairs because I'm saddled with questions that must be sent to my colleagues.
It's indeed, we require technology, as the Minister of Home Affairs referred to earlier, to enhance some of the work. At the SSA, we are improving our technology capability to make sure that we respond. And that technology capability does not mean SSA must develop that capability, but must also have access to that capability. There is important capability that the country has that sits in the CSIR, for instance, that we are going to be able to have access to that technology and review, which will improve some of the work that we are doing. But internally, we are working to enhance that capability. We also, given the level of cooperation, we are able to work and have access to what the police can see, what Home Affairs can see, and what other departments can see, more especially those that are technology-driven. We are integrating our work to be able to have a view of the whole country at a live level, and that detail will be provided to the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence as and when it's established. And we also take note of the issue around the budget of cyber security and technology related within SSA. We are working with the management team to review that budget, and we'll do the necessary submissions when the time is due. Thank you.
Thank you. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Mente.
Asbonge, House Chair. No, Minister, it's good to hear that there is some integration taking place between your department and the other departments, because earlier on, we heard from National Treasury that the issue of the 30% policy is not their law or their policy. And this is what is being used on the ground to stop a lot of projects and service delivery for our people. We see waste not being collected because waste trucks are being intimidated. Construction sites are being intimidated and all of that. How do you get involved there to curb such horrible crime? And secondly, we saw people setting up military camps in South Africa. People of Nelspruit and surrounding woke up one day to some men that were intimidating young women.
Honorable Mente,
and
unfortunately your time has
businesses.
expired.
What was your role there? Thank you.
The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. I'll deal with the question that is relevant to the first question, which is the question of what are we dealing with to deal with extortion rings, the construction mafias, the water tank mafias and related. As indicated earlier, jointly with the police, we've got multidisciplinary teams that are focusing on that work specifically, and we have targeted high priority areas that are largely affected, and that detail in terms of the work of state security will be provided to the Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence. The police do not report, they only report when they make arrests. Thank you.
Thank you. The last supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Zibi. Oh, it's Honorable Ghana.
Minister, on that very point, would you say yourself, Minister, that the proliferation of these extortion rackets points to the failure of the domestic branch of state security agency? Or is it a success?
The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you. I do not understand how the domestic branch of state security agency gets affected, gets to be a failure because there are extortion rings. And if you go to the reasons why you had extortion rings, it's people who were economically disadvantaged and opportunistically use those opportunities to then become destructive in the country. And that's why they go and claim that they want 30% in the business that they do not even have capacity to deliver on. It has nothing to do with a domestic branch. The responsibility that we have as a country is to make sure we build an economy that young people and other people who do not have opportunities for access to economy can then not be exploited by criminals and criminal syndicates for their nefarious means. And that is the real issue that the government of national unity has made an apex priority of making an economy that works, but also creating employment so that young people do not become victims of opportunists, criminal opportunists. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Question number 25 has been asked by the Honorable S.R. Moodley to the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans. The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I want to indicate that I have a bad flu and this aircon is not making my life easy. If I'm unable to continue, the Deputy Minister will be able to continue, but I'll try. Nomkhuhlane. So, Chair, the Defense Intelligence does form part of the government interagency that is collaborating in pursuit of identifying all establishments and activities that may pose a national threat to the Republic of South Africa. So in line with the Defense Intelligence mandate, the Department of Intelligence does continue to identify any imminent threat to military nature in defense of the Republic of South Africa. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable S.R. Moodley.
House Chair, you know, what do you call a country with no border? It's not a country. It's like leaking like a sieve. People are coming in and out of this country. The people that had these private armies were foreign nationals. They weren't from this country. So how safe are our people? Honourable Minister, your response fails to detail who is protecting our borders, while a significant portion of our forces is deployed elsewhere like missions, peace missions. Bring them back home. Let them take care of our borders so that our borders are safe so people can't infiltrate and our people will be safe. We're spending taxpayers' money trying to fight other people's war. We're deploying people elsewhere. Can you provide exact numbers and a strategy to ensure that South Africa's borders are secure against potential external threats, given that we are mandated by the people to prioritize national security? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Before I take the Honorable Minister, there's a hand on the virtual platform. Honorable Kwankwa.
House Chair, my apologies. I've been advised that there were one or two instances where I unintentionally unmuted myself while the House proceedings were on. It was a mistake. I apologize. I just wanted to say that.
Oh, apology accepted. The Honorable the Minister.
No, Chair, I didn't hear the question. I heard the statement that they must come home, we're not safe. I thought the follow-up would be a question, so sizwileke.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable M.D. Lichwete.
Thank you very much, House Chair.
Honorable members, please, can we listen to the speaker on the, thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair, for your protection. And thank you very much also to the Minister for guaranteeing us that our territorial integrity and sovereignty is still intact. Just as a follow-up question to you, as the member of the executive, from me and us as the oversight authority, we would like, can you, Honorable Minister, elaborate on any additional strategies being developed to strengthen oversight and prevent similar security risks in the future, particularly in relation to private entities or private security companies involved in military training or semi-military security-related activities that undermines our territorial integrity and sovereignty?
The Honorable the Minister.
No, Chair, Defense Intelligence main function is to secure borders, to gather intelligence on imminent threats to the country, but also in terms of our borders. It is the work of integrated intelligence that collects that information. So we are part of that body. So we don't do it alone as a body. We are part of the integrated intelligence, and it is the Inspector General of Intelligence broadly who does those surveillance, and as a team work with him. So working together, it's what we continuously do on a daily basis to make sure that there are no internal threats and external threats, internally led by by Inspector General, on our own, just looking at military threats
of people attacking the country, not operating illegal camps.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. If maybe you do feel that you are being affected, maybe as you had said before, we can then give over to the Deputy Minister to take over with regards to questions, because I can hear when you are answering that there is a struggle with your throat. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Harting.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Taking into account the severe financial constraints throttling the SANDF, the impact that it has on training, on the maintenance and procurement of equipment, and in general, the SANDF's restricted operational capacity, and the current DRC, Mozambique, and border deployments, can the Minister give the assurance that the SANDF will be able to successfully deploy 25,000 capable, fully equipped and supported soldiers on a short notice in a situation that threatens South Africa's safety and security, as was the case during the Zuma riots, claiming the lives of more than 350 people?
The Honorable the Minister.
I can assure, so I can give you that assurance, which we will be able to do it.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable L.W. Mahlatsi. Honorable members, please can we give an opportunity to a member that is asking a question so that we are able to hear all the responses. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Minister. Regarding the White River military camp in Mpumalanga province, within the framework of counterintelligence, it is indisputable that the entire intelligence community has been compromised. Now, the question I'm asking is that, have you carried out the nationwide threat assessment to ensure the absence of a similar terrorist camp? Thank you.
The Honorable the Minister.
It's actually, fortunately, the Minister of Intelligence is here, so if you don't mind, Chair, but the General can also answer. In the land, hunting, or the military intelligence, or now Minister of Intelligence. If the chairperson allows,
Honorable members, there is Rule 135 that if the question is not relevant to the department, it does not apply to the minister. But the minister is doing a courtesy of saying the Minister of Intelligence is here. Maybe he can respond to that. If you don't then want that response, because it is not all of you who asked the question, it's Honorable Mahlatsi who asked that question. So it can't be all of us responding to the minister, please. Honorable Mahlatsi.
Thank you, Chair. No pressure, Minister, because if you hear my question, it is based on intelligence community, which comprise of the SNDF, the SAA, and the SAPS, but specifically in the framework or in the context of counterintelligence. So the whole community can answer if they want.
And you know, questions of intelligence are not answered in the House, so, but no, it's true. Or announce kanjinaskani induct. But that we can give you say on an ongoing basis. This surveillance is being done to make sure that we can protect the country, and we can tell you of so many incidents that have been counteracted in good time. But as you say, some of them will go through the cracks. But there is an ongoing work which happens under intelligence for internal threats to protect the country, but also external threats. So,
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Question number 59 has been asked by the Honorable B.J. Mkhwebane to the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development. The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. The total number of statutory rape cases that have been successfully prosecuted as per the question in the period of April 2023 to the end of, March 2024 is 166. Of course, Honorable House Chair, I must put a rider that we do not keep the statistics, both ourselves as a department and as the NPA. So what then we did, so we could be of assistance to the House, we extracted the information from the electronic case management system, which we jointly have got access as the GCPS cluster. And then the breakdown for the period of March 2024 to August was 251. And the outcomes in the cases that have been handed over that have dealt with the first in the 166 period, those were the cases, the first part of the question which were reported, and the conviction rate is at about 148 out of the 166 for that period. And direct imprisonment was 37.8. So during the period of March to then August, the 251 case, the conviction was 227 cases with a conviction rate of about 90%. But one Honorable House Chair must appreciate that the capturing of statistics within the criminal justice cluster in its entirety does prove to be a difficulty. For example, murder, even if it relates to gender-based, may still be categorized as murder, and you need to go out through the records on how the conviction has been made. So a system of ensuring that the two tally, but also are properly identified in how they relate could be of assistance. But this is how far we've attempted to respond to the question of Honorable Mkhwebane.
Thank you. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Tambo.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Mayor, we have a lot of school children under the age of 16 years who gave birth during this financial year, and the youngest being 10 years old. What measures, including legislative changes, etc., are being planned to prevent statutory rape and support victims in our community? Thank you.
The Honorable the Minister.
Well, I don't believe we have statutory problems. We've got compliance problem. Firstly, from reporting or possibly holding the parents or families where protection of such crimes happen in household and they get to be not reported, or victims are encouraged, if reported, to withdraw such crimes, and families believe they will need to resolve them amongst themselves. And I do believe that the system in this instance does protect the rights of the children, even in how the cases have been heard. And in some instances, of course, though minimal, the children themselves, through the educational program, have got access on how to report using the next of kin, including educators, psychologists, nurses who oversee or treat such cases. I think it could be more of a public education enhancements, particularly to the young children themselves, to be able to understand when they are being violated and what does the Constitution protect them, their rights in terms of not being violated.
Thank you. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Hassan.
Thank you very much, House Chair, and to yourself, Minister, for a very comprehensive response. But perhaps just as a follow-up question, what collaboration does this department have with the Department of Basic Education to deal with sexual assault and statutory rape amongst learners who become pregnant below the age of 16? Thank you.
The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. As I've slightly touched it, the collaboration between the Department of Education, between the Department of Health, between the Department of Social Development in terms of assistance, including our magistrate courts that deals with our maintenance clerks and officers to deal with that. If I'm recalling, for example, the report by Hete, which is also stated in the Statistician General, in the past financial year, we had around 100 and something children between the age of 10 to 19 years who dropped out of school, of which 700 were between the age of 10 and 15 or 10 to 14 years. The collaboration is there and can also be enhanced. One, the improvement of the basic regulations in terms of access of the girls to continue to be able to go to school and be assisted by educators. Challenges, yes, do arise that because educators are not necessarily trained to be of assistance when such a need for maternal care comes for at school or during school hours. But our learners are allowed to continue with their education. They are assisted through the department. In most of the instances, the cases that are reported from the Department of Education and the Department of Health. The challenges we have are with the cases where it's not necessarily learners, but it's young people because families do protect in some instances that, or the children who drop out without really an explanation and a relocation to other areas, which defeats the system in terms of understanding what are the issues. And again, I think the issue of collaboration is of importance. The issue of education and educating our young children and girls is of importance.
Thank you. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Khobisa Ngaba.
Minister, I'd like to give you a chance to reconsider your answer to Honorable Tambo. The stats you gave, from what I can hear, maths is not strong. It sounds like less than 2/3 are prosecuted. It sounds like less than a quarter get prison sentences. Now, I also heard you blaming families, and then I heard you saying the department is doing enough. Are you really satisfied with those statistics? And do you think you're living up to the constitutional duty to put the best interests of children of paramount importance?
Honorable the Minister.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure what is the clapping before I could even respond. But nonetheless, it is okay. Well, I understand you clapped to a question. Well, that's very interesting. Honorable House Chair, I did explain that we have extracted the information, firstly. So simply, if we were a ministry which didn't want to assist and honestly respond, we should have said the question is not necessarily relevant to the department. I did mention that we extracted from the system. I gave the numbers of what the system has extracted. 2, we are at the end of the criminal justice cluster. An act happens, an investigation happens after reporting, prosecution happens. So if cases are minimally reported, you cannot prosecute what is not in court. We could not be able to come across any which suggests there are more cases in the system which are categorized. I further elaborated that there is a weakness, yes, in system that in some instances, cases may not necessarily be recorded as statutory rape, but may be recorded as rape, or may not be aligned in terms of the age. So if the system has given figures in your view that are not correct, I may not be able to be helpful to the question. So the question of how many were then reported, we pulled into the system and we looked into the outcome of what are the issues that are there. Remember, a conviction rate and an imprisonment imposed are two different things. You could be found guilty and be given a fine. You could be found guilty and have direct imprisonment. So, in the conviction, for example,
Honorable
of March
Minister,
2024,
your time has expired. The last supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Webster.
Thank you, House Chair. Part of the reason why there's a call for the National Register of Sex Offenders to be made public is for the protection of children. And so that isn't the case at the moment, so I'll ask a question that relates to the register as it stands now, with the status that it has. When you talk about the prosecutions that you're talking about now, how many of those prosecutions, of those who are prosecuted, are repeat offenders who actually sit on that National Register for Sex Offenders as it is now?
The Honorable Minister.
Honorable House Chair, I may not have the exact figures, and I will request to refer back on that part of the question so that I'm truthful to the House. The register is open, but I don't have a direct response when your question is directly to say how many repeat offenders. I need to be able to go back to the system and look for the repeat offenders and categorize the numbers that I've given to the House. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Question number 17 has been asked by Honorable Mukwena to the Minister of Police. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chair. South African Police Service has established some time ago a forum called a National Forum for Municipal Metropolitan Police Services, and they are abbreviated as MPSs. It includes relevant structures such as Civilian Secretariat,
Honorable Mkalipi, please do not disturb the Minister while he is giving a response. Continue, Honorable Minister.
Yeah, it includes, among others, Civilian Secretariat for Police Services, the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, the Road Traffic Management Corporation, the Road Traffic Infringement Agency, the South African Local Government Association. So these are the forums, and there are quite a number of them. The main objective of the forum includes identification of challenges which may hamper effective service delivery by the MPSs, to deliver mechanisms to remove the challenges, and to take decisions aimed at enhancing coordination and cooperation among stakeholders by ensuring the effective utilization of resources in the performance of law enforcement functions. Honorable members may be aware that over and above this, we've initiated an agreement. We call it cooperation agreement across the spheres of government, national, provincial, and local, because we want to increase personnel, share resources, and increase and tap on each other's resources. But the main thing is to align all the anti-crime forces against criminals at whatever level. Now, to further enhance adequate collaboration between SABs and MPSs, the forum developed an implementation collaboration strategies in 2019, and a memorandum of understanding was agreed on. And it also provides oversight for IPID. But during July 2024, Minister of Police, as I've said, we have initiated this new body, all of which are aimed at fighting crime on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Mukwena.
Thank you, Chair. Section 205.
subsection 2 of the Constitution provide that the national legislation must establish the powers and function of the police service and must enable the police service to discharge its responsibilities effectively, taking into account the requirements of the provinces. And Section 206, subsection 1, further provides that a member of the cabinet must be responsible for policing and must determine the national policing policy after consulting the provincial government and taking into account the policing needs and priorities of the provinces as determined by the provincial executive. Honorable Minister, is there any limitation in law for the collaborative and coordinated approach between the spheres of government to fight corruption and ensure the safety of the people? I thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. Where we are at the moment, we're at an advanced stage of completing the policing policy in the country. When it started the 7th administration, there was a draft which was not complete, and then which is now at a very advanced stage. Once it is completed, it will then enable provinces to make inputs in accordance with that policy, and will collaborate accordingly once that policy is completed and indicates how the provinces will play their role, and they will have an opportunity to also participate and make inputs. Thank you.
Thank you. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Chikaling.
Thank you, House Chair. Thank you, Minister, for that. I would just like to ask, I've heard you speak a lot about policy, but policy doesn't work on the ground. How frequently do the SAPS and the local and/or metro police meet to discuss crime trends, share intelligence and coordinate strategies, and conduct joint strategy sessions and training sessions to ensure all units are familiar with each other's procedures and strategies? Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
I've just covered an area in that question by saying we have, let me make this example. On Friday this week, we are signing a cooperative agreement with Western Cape government and the Metro in particular. And the reason for that is to collaborate. The reason for that is to share information. The reason for that is to align all the resources that we have as a state across the spheres of government. We'll go on to Eastern Cape, do the same. In Gauteng, do the same. Wherever there are metro police, because that's a resource available to the state. But what has been happening is a situation where there's no collaboration, there's no alignment. And therefore, we fight the same battle, but we don't know each other. We don't know who is doing what. Now align, and this will then enhance capacity for the state as a whole to fight crime together across the spheres of government. It will also include even private companies that will be selected, and it will involve communities via CPFs, as it were, so that we all line up this side of the fence and we leave criminals on the other side of the fence. Thank you.
Thank you. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Adams. There's no Adams. Okay, we are passing. The last supplementary question will be asked by Honorable James.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair. Minister, SABC holds the authoritative mandate in terms of law enforcement. However, I'm concerned that an us and them syndrome has developed in communities and police stations across South Africa. Let me give you some examples where SABC refuses to work with MPDs because they feel that they are paid more than what they are being paid as SABC members. They have access to overtime and SABC members. So these are just some of the realities on the ground, as well as the difference in governments in terms of you have an MMC from a different party, and that MMC wants to take the credit and and shine and not the brigadier at the station. So those are the realities. This is particularly worrying as it often hampers collaboration and joint efforts to combat crime due to the lack of effective cooperation from all these peers. My question to you is, what is your plan to address this issue and ensure that beyond just law enforcement, cooperation in joint operations, there is a sustained inclusion? I heard you speaking about
Honorable
communities
James,
early on, and I'm glad.
your time has
Inclusion
expired.
of communities, NGOs,
Honorable
and
James,
activists. Thank you.
your time has expired. The Honorable Minister.
Well, just with due respect to yourself, over and above what I've said, I will again respond. The initiative that we are taking aims to resolve exactly those problems where in a particular police station there's no alignment because police are this and that, as you say. It is now to make sure that we work together, the police, and not just with metro police where there are metro police, but also go further to work with organized anti-crime community formations on the ground, and we're identifying them. That is why we are going to be going initially to the 4 provinces that are crime-ridden: Western Cape, Eastern Cape, and then Gauteng. And I know you want us to prioritize Gauteng, and then KZN. If you could control, reasonably control crime in those 4, the country will, with all likelihood, follow in terms of reduced criminality in the country. So the initiatives that we are taking go down to the ground. All formations, of course, we'll select so that we make sure we don't get unnecessarily infiltrated. But that's the aim, so that all of us get involved in fighting crime, because we know better. Those criminals come from amongst ourselves. We even worship them. There are people who are well known now in communities just for criminality, and they've become popular and they are known and they are feared. This is what we want to deal with.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Question number 41 has been asked by the Honorable Chikaling to the Minister of Police. The Honorable Minister.
The response is that there are no dockets that were stolen from any specific police station in Limpopo, none. The 26 dockets in question were stolen during 3 separate incidents of theft of a motor vehicle. The first incident occurred when the state vehicle from Seshego Family Violence, Sexual Offense and Child Protection Unit was broken into, and 15 case dockets were stolen. 7 case dockets were stolen out of a Leboa FCS state vehicle in the second incident, and the third incident was also a theft out of a motor vehicle where 4 case dockets were stolen out of a state vehicle of the Provincial Serial Electronic Crime Investigation Unit. The FSC, Provincial SECI units are serving different stations around the province. That is the reason that the dockets from different stations were stolen during the incident. Cases of theft out of motor vehicles were opened for all 3 incidents, and all 26 dockets were fully reconstructed by investigating officers and are being attended to. The following immediate measures are put in place to prevent any losses in the future. 1, registration and management of case dockets, and are handled according to the National Instruction 3 of 2011, registration case dockets of the Crime Administration System, and National Instruction 13 of 2017, case docket management. 2, all case dockets opened on the community service centers in police stations are inspected for correctness by the floor manager by completing SAPS 6 checklist, and the contents case dockets are scanned to preserve the information which include but not limited to the cover of the case docket and the statement from the victim or complainant. Lastly, the station commanders were instructed to ensure that all case dockets that are registered are discussed during Station Crime Combating Forum to ensure that charges were correctly formulated and all cases accounted for. Thank you.
Thank you. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Chikaling.
Thank you, ma'am. It's very strange to me that the dockets that were all stolen all relate to rape and GBV and nothing else in Limpopo, but nevertheless, we are very much aware that the investigating officers are very overburdened in our country. I mean, we know that they sit between 400 and 500 cases each. It is a heavy caseload. The loss of stolen dockets has definitely raised a concern since 2004. It's not a new thing. And it is a serious issue that undermines the foundations of our criminal justice system. Minister, what has the outcome been of IPID investigations into these losses? And what findings were made by the Directorate into its investigation into the theft and loss of case dockets at SAPS stations? Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
Well, again, I've just indicated the measures that we're taking in terms of making sure that we preserve or even prevent any further losses of dockets. But over and above this, we note that SABC is quite lower than required in terms of technology. And this is a weakness that we've identified and we seek to address. Well, budgets allowing, but we want to make an effort, even over and above the availability of finance, because this is an urgent matter. This is 2024. It's no longer, 19 wara. It's 2024. And I think it's important that even SABs come of age in terms of modernization, which is part of professionalization, which our country requires at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Plakis.
Thank you, House Chair. Minister, what you're answering of the previous question, you've actually kind of covered me on the modernization of the management of your dockets in the police. I'm glad that you have now actually considered it, considering the loss of dockets in your department. So what we will maybe like to see is the implementation and the timeframes of it, so that we understand when will you start with it, when will you finish your engagement with the management, so that it moves in that fashion. But I think you've covered me on the management of the docket system and moving to new technology.
The Honorable Minister.
What I can say is that it's Pezwai. It's not that we haven't started. We have already started. But when you interview, you discuss intensely with the officials as they brief you that they have started. You want to get a sense of the coverage in the whole country. And their response is that, yes, we are doing this, but it looks like it is slow, because they say by the time they get to the next province, some of their technology would have expired or would have lost impact. And therefore, we need to change the approach such that we don't experience such things. But it's not like there is nothing. They are working. What is remaining is pace and quality, so that we really have a sense that in the whole country, in terms of technology, we're at 60% by the whole country, or we're at 70% just on dockets. At the moment, it's not exactly the case. Thank you.
Thank you. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Mailola.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, ge o ka tsitsinkela, ebile wa kwishisha gore go katwa ga basadi le bana ke tlhoba boroko go rena. Go timelela ga di-docket ka dikgorong tša sephodisa ke selo seo re seng ra swanela gore re ka se dumelele. Minister, e ka ba ke mokgwa ofe ebile wa maleba ebile o nepagetšeng o tlong o šomišwa go dira gore di-docket ga di timelele ka kantorong tša sephodisa. E ka be maphodisa a rena ao a swanetšeng gore a re šireletše ba utswetšwa. How can you steal from the police station? Are our police the ones that are stealing the dockets, or do we have an issue? Ke a leboga.
Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Okunye mhlonishwa, benginqofa nje lapha nalapha. Ngingakutholi kahle ukuthi uthini. Ngenxa yokuthi ngenxa yolimi. But to respond to you as honestly as possible, there are such cases. There are such cases and incidents of dockets, not really mysteriously as it would go in terms of the legend, disappearing. But it's part of corruption that we need to rid ourselves of and rid SABS of, where there would be some connections outside and then dockets disappear. It's a serious issue because it affects the image, not only of SABS, but of the country as a whole. And it's something that we're focusing on, firstly, to do what I'm saying, modernize so that it's not easy, or if it doesn't even happen, because once you have modernized and you ensure that you are now electronic, it will be very difficult to experience such incidents. I think people are exploiting the fact that we've been very slow in making sure that we modernize, and that is the way of resolving. But magu khona la ngishiye khona mhlonishwa nganqofanga kahle khona usiyongthethelela.
Thank you. The last supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Ghana. Honorable Ghana, please take your seat, yes. Honorable Mente.
Chair, Minister, uthi if unenda wayishile ucela uncediso awumvumelanga uba simncedise. Ushiye la ndawo ithi kutheni lamadokethi angafakwa kwi-system through iscanner xa ku-capturishwa ukuze angalahleki. Ushiye loo ndawo.
Okay, Honorable Mente. Mangimuzwe kahle uMinister ngimzwile ungqongqoshe uthe uma ngabe lapha thathe khona angazwanga kahle ucela amthethelele. Bengithi usho njalo. So bengazwanga ukuthi uthi ucela ukuthi amncede ukuthi ayizwe futhi question. Angazi ngizwe kahle Minister.
Sizwele kahle kodwa empendulweni yami ephambili, before I responded to her, I did mention that to address what I was...
Honorable Mailola, sorry, Honorable Minister, I need you to listen to the response because it is particularly you who asked the question. Thank you. Over to you.
Yeah, I did respond in when I did talk about this in terms of the steps that we're taking to prevent a repeat or a repeated occurrence of losses, whether through stealing or corruption, or even in this case of the other question, where dockets get lost because of whatever happened in a vehicle. That we have started addressing that problem, and I did indicate in my response, which I can't see now, but yeah, registration and management of case dockets are handled according to instruction 3 and so on, and then all case dockets opened at the community service centers, which are in police stations, are inspected for correctness and by the house manager, by the floor manager, and station commanders were instructed to ensure that all case dockets that are registered are discussed during station crime combating forum. So there are measures. For instance,
Honorable
and the
Minister,
contents case
unfortunately, your
dockets are
extra 1
scanned.
minute that you were given has expired.
Sure, thanks.
The last supplementary question will be taken by Honorable Ghana.
When the minister will translate, loko evulabula mhaka leyi ya docket ntiyiso hi lowu hi fanele hi vulavula ntiyiso maphorisa va xavisa ti-docket. Let's not beat around the bush. It is the police that are selling the dockets. What are you going to do to the policemen and women who are selling dockets and claim that the dockets have been stolen?
The Honorable Minister.
Any policeman or woman, I'm now specific, who gets known or when we find out that this has happened, they get charged. It's not something that is going to happen. It's something that is happening. This is one of the offenses that a policeman or a policewoman can do to make a docket disappear. People have been charged and they've lost their jobs. And I can indicate to you that just from January to now, more than 30 police officers have lost their jobs via corruption related. I can't say whether it involved dockets, but it's various offenses by police so I'm indicating that steps are being taken. Each time there is something that is a misdemeanor that happens, because we are saying police are a law enforcement agent, and individual members must take responsibility of making sure they protect. By the way, that statement that you are making, that police sell, is not necessarily true. It would be a specific policeman or woman who would do that. And they are very limited in number. Very, very limited in number. But yes, it's not police in general. It would be that particular person at that time. I'm trying to say, the connotation of the statement shouldn't be read as saying, police, you'll find them selling in the street. It doesn't happen that. It's particular incidents at a given moment. And each time it happens, we act on them. And we will continue to act on them. Thank you.
Thank you. That was the last supplementary question. Question number 21 has been asked by Honorable Sokanyile to the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. The Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. The G20 is the premier forum for global economic cooperation.
Honorable Minister, can you maybe come closer to the mic, or if you don't mind, you can sit and thank you.
Thank you very much. The G20 is the premier forum for global economic cooperation, whose members, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, represent around 85% of the global GDP, 75% of the global exports, and 60% of the global population. In this regard, our presidency of the G20 places South Africa in a strategic position to lobby for policy gains within this influential international platform that will benefit our country, region, and the continent. Among the areas we will focus on in this regard are promote policies that ensure economic benefits for South Africans, in particular the economically marginalized members of our society. Pushing reforms for a global debt architecture to ensure debt crises do not undermine the realization of the SDGs in South Africa, our sub-region, and the continent. Mobilize financing to close development financing gap which is currently estimated at USD 4.2 trillion annually, up from USD 2.5 trillion before the COVID-19 pandemic. Curbing illicit financial flows, the IFFs have contributed a great deal in reversing and delaying the continent's drive towards achieving Agenda 2063 and SDG targets. Every year, approximately 88.6 billion US dollars is lost from the continent due to the IFFs. Extension of the implementation of the debt service suspension initiative by the G20 is one of the unfulfilled initiatives that could unlock Africa's fiscal constraints. Africa stands to benefit from the initiative as many of the countries on the continent service their debt interests instead of providing basic services such as health, housing, and jobs. Establishment of a cross-sectoral and innovative multi-sector stakeholder partnership to facilitate universal access to reliable and affordable energy. Strengthen skills development for the youth. In addition, South Africa's presidency of the G20 will have a strong focus on Africa and its development as highlighted by President Ramaphosa in his 2020 SONA. South Africa will use the opportunity presented by its presidency of the G20 platform to advance priorities for the AU Agenda 2063, working closely with the African Union, including its RECs, which is also a member of the G20. In this regard, South Africa will advocate for improving trade facilitation and creating a conducive investment climate on the continent, particularly within the context of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. South Africa will also lobby the G20 to increase their investment and technical support on an ongoing infrastructure development projects across Africa, which are vital to deepening regional cooperation and integration. Lastly, South Africa's presidency of the G20 will further endeavor to continue highlighting the needs, aspirations, and ambitions of developing countries and will serve as a platform for engagement on issues that are critical to the countries of the Global South, and in particular, the African continent. This is a prime platform, Honorable House Chair, and will call the whole nation to rally behind these great initiatives aimed to resolve some of our developmental challenges as a country. I thank you.
Thank you. The first supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Nalumango.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Minister, considering the critical role the G20 plays in shaping global economic policies, how will Minister ensure that South Africa's presidency actively promotes the immediate economic interest of all African nations, as well as challenges like sustainable development, equitable trade practices, and investment in infrastructure? Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson. We have already started the process to integrate our program of the G20. We have done so in the recently held SADC summit, where we advocated for issues related to the critical minerals, the industrialization of the region, increasing of trade amongst the regional players in SADC, where it was found that in the region was still trading at about 21%. And if we can work more with our development finance partners, we can be able to increase. We've also engaged on issues related to one-stop border post in the region, which is now expanded to economic corridors, which we believe with this integration, it will advance our agenda in the G20 for the region to work together to be inclusive in terms of regional trade, to be inclusive in terms of regional integration, and also in us advocating for the critical minerals that are abundant in our region and also in the African continent as a whole. I thank you.
Thank you. The second supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Powell.
Chairperson, the question will be asked by Honorable Smith.
Honorable Smith.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Honourable Minister, South Africa is the only African country in the G20 and will be the first on the continent to host its summit in 2025. The G20 summit has always served as a platform where geopolitical conflicts are raised and deliberated on, particularly those which threaten the regional stability of member states. Given the Russian Federation's continued involvement in destabilization efforts and attacks on African democracy by means of the Wagner Group and Africa Corps, most recently in the civil war in Sudan, will the minister address this with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and how will he take up the nefarious intentions of Russia's presence in Africa as a means to stifle democracy and incite conflict and crimes against humanity? Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chair. South Africa's policy is very clear in terms of regional peace and stability and advocating for human rights. And we do so irrespective of which country, whether from whichever is the north or from the south. And we will not be specifically targeting any country. We will participate in the G20 and will invite all G20 partners to participate. And Russia is part of the G20. They will be invited to participate in our country through the platform of the G20, which they've always participated in. We will continue to advocate for regional integration. We will continue to advocate for preferential financial stability, which is preferential and favorable to developing countries. We will continue, Chairperson, to use the G20 platform as a premium platform to advocate for the development of the African continent, as I've already said, with regards to issues related to debt structuring for the benefit of the continent, because most of the countries in the continent find themselves having to pay their debt instead of dealing with issues of service delivery. So all these issues South Africa will advocate for, and we will continue to play our role in regional peace and stability in the African continent, across the continent, through our platform in SADC and through our platform in the AU through Agenda 2063, with an agenda to silence the guns, irrespective of where the guns come from. Thank you, House Chairperson.
Thank you. The third supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Muntwedi.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Minister, as the president of G20 in 2025, South Africa will have a rare opportunity to drive will have a rare opportunity to drive reforms in some key multilateral institutions. And indeed, you mentioned what are some of those reforms that you intend to drive. Now, with specific reference to the IMF and the World Bank, who are known for driving structural adjustment programs which severely inhibit the capacity of developing economies to drive major social reform programs. There are no clear accountability structures to hold these institutions to account. Now, what reforms, Minister, in relation to the IMF specifically, will the South African presidency in the G20 seek to achieve in 2025? Thank you.
The Honorable Minister.
Thank you, House Chair. South Africa continues to play its role in advocating for reform of multilateral institutions, including the UN Security Council, the IMF, and other global financial institutions, where South Africa is a member. And you will remember that even during the COVID-19 period, we played a driving role for the African continent to reform in the manner in which our vaccine was allocated, including for the continent itself. And even with the IMF, when it ended up providing loans to the African continent, we advocated for conditions-free loan. This is our role to champion for such kind of financial institutions to provide preferential financial instruments that are favorable to the development of the African continent. And as I've said already, debt structuring is also a key feature of this agenda, because most of the money in the African continent end up only being used to pay for debts instead of development, service delivery, and so forth. So this is an agenda South Africa will continue to advocate for, when we are at the excellence of the G20 to drive an agenda to develop our continent and also to feed into Agenda 2063, but also to enhance the Africa Free Trade Area. As I've said, we have already started with the recently held SADC Summit, because we see this platform of G20 not just for ourselves as South Africa, but for the continent as a whole. It must help us to enhance regional integration. It must help us to enhance, to find favorable financial instruments, and also to help us to industrialize our country, including for beneficiation in the continent through the critical minerals that DMR is spearheading in our country. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you. The last supplementary question will be asked by Honorable Letlape.
Thank you, Chair. To the Honorable Minister, low-cost energy is the bloodline of any economy. We have moved from Eskom being the lowest cost producing utility in the world and being a global electrical company of that year to exporting our black gold and importing loans we cannot afford from G20 countries. What will you do to facilitate, because all the things that we talk about without low-cost accessible energy is just a catastrophe. We've had 4 deaths because people are illegally connected. What will you do to ensure that the G20 partners that we give our precious coal to produce low-cost energy in their countries will give us favorable rates and loans for the greenness that we seek at the expense of being
Honorable Letlape, your time has expired. Honorable Minister.
Yeah, thank you, House Chairperson. Indeed, one of the tracks of the G20 is to deal with the issues of finance for development, including the just transition into the low carbon emissions. It is part of the program to find such favorable rates that will enable us to continue to generate much needed energy for our economy in a more favorable and less expensive way. And this hosting of the G20 give us a platform to engage with developmental finance institutions, to also engage with the people of the world and those developed countries to provide with us such financial instruments that will enable us to finance our migration into the green economy in a manner that is less expensive and in a manner that is sustainable, but also in a manner that enables us to take our people as we transition, so that we don't leave our peoples and their skills behind, but we move with them, and also the electricity is sustainable and it's what the economy can afford. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members, the time allocated for questions has expired. Outstanding replies received will be printed in Hansard. But before honorable members stand, I would like to bring to your attention a matter that I've made a ruling on that took place on the 23rd July 2024. During the debate on vote 1, the presidency, a point of order was raised by Honorable Matafa regarding the remarks that were made by Honorable Ndlozi about the mental health and or status of the president. Honorable Ndlozi had said that when engaging with the president, the House, and I quote, may be dealing with psychosis, whose symptoms are delusions and illusions. But our candidate tonight truly believes in the delusions that he gives us. We have passed the stage of fiction and we are dealing with mental illness. I ruled that Honorable Ndlozi should withdraw the remarks, whereupon the former member of the House, Honorable Shivambu, rose on a point of order and argued that the word schizophrenia had been upheld as not being unparliamentary. Based on legal advice and previous rulings, by presiding officers in the House, I then ruled that I would study the Hansard and revert to the House with the considering ruling. Having had the opportunity to study the Hansard, I rule as follows. Section 58(1)(a) of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, 1996, as well as the National Assembly Rule 63(1), state that cabinet members, deputy ministers, and members of the National Assembly have freedom of speech in the Assembly and in its committees, subject to its rules and orders. National Assembly Rule 84 states that no member may use offensive, abusive, insulting, disrespectful, unbecoming, and unparliamentary words or language, nor offensive, unbecoming, or threatening gestures. In terms of National Assembly Rule 2F and G, directives and guidelines of the Rules Committee and rulings by the Speaker and other presiding officers are part of the sources of authority of the National Assembly. Honorable members, a close reading of the Hansard reveals that Honorable Ndlozi directed his remarks at the President, whom he referred to as the sitting President. It is also evident that the Hansard that Honorable Ndlozi contravened National Assembly Rule 84, as he made an abusive, insulting, disrespectful, unbecoming, and unparliamentary pronouncement on his purported diagnosis of the President's mental health, particularly when he said, and I quote, "We may be dealing with psychosis whose symptoms are delusion and illusion, but our candidate tonight truly believes in the delusion that he gives us. We have passed the stage of fiction and we are dealing with mental illness." Let me also state that Honorable Shibambu's submission that the word schizophrenia had been upheld has not been unparliamentary based on legal advice and previous ruling by presiding officers in the House and substantiated. Instead, on the 2nd December 2020, a ruling was made in the House that it was unparliamentary to refer to another member as having a form of mental illness. Honorable members, I am advised that Honorable Ndlozi is on the platform, has joined on the platform. Honorable Ndlozi's remarks went beyond the privilege granted to members in terms of Section 58(1)(a) of the Constitution and the National Assembly Rule 63(1), because that privilege is subjected to the Assembly's rules and orders. The House imposes the restriction upon itself to, among others, ensure the orderly conduct of proceedings in determining whether a remark is parliamentary or not. The presiding officer takes into consideration inter alia the context and tone of a particular remark or inference. Rule 84 has been further elucidated that years of establishment practice and convention. Honorable Ndlozi, Honorable Ndlozi, Honorable Ndlozi, I will, however...
Yes, House Chairperson, I am all ears.
Okay. Please withdraw your remarks that when engaging with the President in the House, we may be dealing with someone suffering from psychosis or mental illness.
Honorable Chairperson, I respectfully reserve
Point
my
of
right
order, House
to...
Chair. Where's the point of order?
We request that Honorable Ndlozi should show his face on the platform.
Yes.
What rule is that? Which rule? Which rule is that? Please,
Honorable members, honorable members, honorable members, please. I have allowed Honorable Ndlozi to speak. And Honorable Ndlozi is on the platform now. I am the presiding officer. Do not mind other people who will be speaking. I will rule on it. If I want Honorable Ndlozi to show his face, I will do so. But Honorable Ndlozi, please proceed.
Am I audible, House Chair?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, I respectfully reserve my right to challenge the ruling at the Rules Committee. I think that it is a bad reading of what I had said, and the operative word, quite frankly, is the coordinate conjunction may. So I really think that it is not a correct reading, and reserve my right to challenge it through the parliamentary process with the Rules Committee. I accordingly refuse to withdraw. Thank
Honorable
you very much.
Ndlozi, as you may state that you reserve your right to challenge the ruling, but as the House Chair now, my ruling is that you withdraw from that, then you will challenge it later if you want to do the processes of challenging it. But I am now, as the presiding officer, say that you must withdraw from what I have stated in the ruling. Honorable Ndlozi?
House Chairperson, I'm saying that I reserve my right to challenge
So
the
you
ruling.
don't
at the
want to
Rules Committee.
adhere to the ruling of the presiding officer?
I think that the
I'm
ruling must
questioning
be
you
challenged.
because I will ask ICT to remove you from the platform.
House Chairperson, I think that it must be challenged. It's a wrong ruling.
Are you challenging that? ICT,
Yes.
please remove Honorable
Yes.
Ndlozi from the platform. Order, honorable members. I request members to stand and wait for the chair and the mice to leave the chamber. That concludes the business of the day and the House is adjourned.
Thank you,
Long
Chair.
live Madam
Thank you, House
Speaker.
Chair.